I was looking for men's groups about 7, 8 years ago. And I can't remember how I found the book, but I found a group that was meeting. It was 3 or 4 men that were meeting to discuss the book and go through all the different steps. And it was funny. I went to like two meetings talking about the book, reading through it, and the guy that set it up, one of the other men that came, they connected like right away, and then the group stopped. This is like the guy found it. What he was looking for was one good friend to hang out, go to the bar with.
I got you.
Watch the rest of us hanging. So that started my, my growth in that area, personal development. Because I read that book, I was like, and every man I've ever recommended it to since then says, how did he know to write this book about me? And so that one thing led to another. I started reading other personal development books, and then I read a book by Devon Franklin called The Truth About Men. And in that book, The Truth About Men,
my reading list.
I'm reading it, and he's talking about how men need to be in community with small groups of men, hanging out, talking about real things, not talking about golf, not talking about the weather, not talking about sports, but talking about real, my wife did this, I'm frustrated, and I was like, son of a gun, that's the missing piece. And I instantly started a meetup. And we were going to go through Truth About Men first as a book study kind of thing. And then I was going to use Men Become No More Mr. Nice Guy. We got one meeting into it, and I had a guy showed up. He had been spent a lot of time out on the East Coast, New York area. He said he'd been part of men's groups for 20 years, had a whole bunch of stuff that he could let me use, and we basically took all that, adapted it for what's now been my men's group is Men Becoming Better Men for now 5+ years. Excuse me. So yeah, that's how I got into the work, and then that's what keeps me going every day. The stories of guys that come into the group and are so just broken, and I don't want to use the word broken. They're not broken, but in pieces, and need help being put back together. Whether it's men coming out of divorce, men that didn't have friends, or like I did, grew up being bullied, or just whatever the case may be, job losses, whatever, and getting into that and being able to be there as a sounding board, place to challenge people, help them find their purpose, things like that. It's been absolutely rewarding.
It's crazy how many different people I talk to, and I still hear, like you mentioned with Dr. Glover's book, the same story. And there's still moments when I'm thinking like, yeah, but maybe it's not. And then I meet a brand new guy and it's the exact same story. I mean, another guy, exact same story. Very funny with me is that I do massage therapy, mostly medical massage, but like I do a handful of relaxation. It's mostly women. And I'll tell them I'm getting into men's work. I'm trying to do the coaching thing and the whole 9 yards, finding my own space. And I'll tell them like, well, this is what I mostly see with what guys do. And like, without fail, how are you talking about my husband right now? How did you know he's doing, like, how do you know about my, like every woman I've talked to? Or you'll see the women that like have grounded, healthy husbands, and you like, what do they have? Oh, they have their guys they hang out with on the weekends. They go fishing, they go hunting, they do stuff together. They call each other on their bullshit. They're happy, they're grounded, and just like it's this common theme you keep seeing again and again and again and again. I'm curious, what do you think of like the origin point? I think everyone has their own opinion of it, but I think collectively we're kind of getting to a point where we realize where it really is coming from on a societal level. What's the origin point of most men getting stuck in life, these setbacks, difficulty moving forward? Like, why did we lose a lot of men need men, but where did that go? Why did we lose it?
Yeah. Well, I see it two ways. First, like you said, societal. We all grew up female teachers. Dad was at work. Mom, grandmothers, aunts are, forming our our thoughts and teaching us and guiding us through this is how things work. And we didn't have that solid connection with our fathers. For me, it's funny for me. I had it both ways. It was kind of a feast or famine for me. I did spend a lot of time with my dad. We used to work on cars in my grandpa's garage a lot, but then that was like weekend, and we did a lot of work around the house and stuff on weekends. So I was around him and saw his work ethic and how he did things, and he taught me how to, changing oil and changing spark plugs and all that kind of guy stuff, right? But then during the week, he'd go to the office, and it was like very little, very not much interaction. And what that I think that did was I was getting enough, but I was getting a little, but I wasn't getting enough to be fully developed. The second part where I think it's like I said, it's twofold. That's a piece of it, at least for me. The other piece of it is early childhood trauma. For me in particular, I didn't find this till a few years ago. I was actually conceived before my parents were married by a good 7 or 8 months. And I know my mom hates when I tell this story, but it's the truth. It's my origins. It's my origin story, so I got to tell it. I was conceived out of wedlock, and what I understand from the situation, and as I've learned things over the years, they struggled with that. It was hard. They were in a small town in the late 1960s. That kind of stuff wasn't normal at that point. My dad was in college. I'm sure there was a lot of stress and a lot of, oh my God, what are we going to do? We got to get married. All of those things that you would think of having a child, conceiving a child before you're married. And in the late 1960s, again, things were a heck of a lot different than they are now. So pressure, stress, all those things. And what I've learned through my coaching certification and the modalities that I've learned is all of that stress, emotion, feelings, all those things that both of my parents were experiencing at the time. I'm guessing there was arguments going on, heavy discussions, all was being basically programmed into my DNA as I was in utero. So I come out and I've already got this identity, subconscious identity created in my mind that, I'm not wanted, or I was a mistake, or, fill in anything along those lines to make me feel like I wasn't meant to be part of the world. And you take that ingrained subconscious piece of your life and you start looking through all of the things that happen in life, whether it was being bullied in elementary school, or not having a really good friend in high school or college, and getting into a marriage that basically because the girl was paying attention to me, and we kind of hit it off in that way. We got married, we had kids, and spent almost 20 years together before we realized that we were not compatible in any way. Just a lot of things like that end up happening in your life because of what happened back then. And on top of that, not having enough time with my dad along the ways during those teen years where my true identity should have been being formed and come out. But it wasn't getting there because of the thing that happened in the past. So
when you work with guys, what is your methodology to then try to connect the dots? Because I think a lot of men, I know for myself for a long time, and I've heard this even from my own father, I think him and a lot of men, that part of them knows it's I don't want to blame it on that thing that happened when I was 5 years old, but it's starting to make more sense the more I think about it. And it can be tough to really grapple with the idea of something happening 20, 30, 50 years ago and still affecting you to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't blame, I don't use the word blame. I mean, I'm sure like I said, I'd be freaking out too if I had gotten that girlfriend pregnant. They were 19 years old. Again, small town, late 1960s, I would have been terrified. I'd have been terrified it happened when I was in the late 80s. When I was that age in the late 80s, I'd have been terrified. So I don't blame them for it.
Hmm.
It's a thing. It's a fact. That's all it is in my mind. It's a fact now. Um, but where it caused the problem was when I didn't know.
Hmm.
I had these feelings. I was confused. I didn't know which way I was. I couldn't figure out why. Kids didn't. I didn't get along with other kids. I would get into fights with kids in the neighborhood. Um, I never really, again, never was. I was really never an athlete. I was an athlete, but I wasn't a good athlete. I played for the sake of playing, but I was never one of the top guys that was being sought after or played a lot. I sat on the end of the bench, I think, for a couple of years playing baseball in high school. So, I mean, love the game, but I was never that good at it to where I was, one of the key people. But yeah, just to be able to go through that and never understand quite why. You have a feeling that that something was wrong, but you really never could figure it out. And when you're growing up, even through elementary school and high school and college, unless you're studying psychology, which I did, and I went into business school. You really don't understand where that's coming from or why that's happening in your life, and for me, it was extremely confusing.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I went through the divorce, uh, got through the pain and the depression and all the things that came with that, and finally figured out, wait a minute, there's there's a reason why. Again, back to Dr. Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. All of those things and all of those developmental things and societal things that had kind of created me to be this nice guy that I was, and it was not attractive to other men, other women, or anybody. So I spent a lot of time alone in my life, and
Yeah.
it's extremely discouraging. And the reason I work with guys now is because I don't want guys to have, I don't want them to have the same thoughts that I had when I was coming up through my 20s, 30s, 40s. Just that feeling of loneliness, that feeling of what is my purpose in life? That's one of my big things I work with people on is purpose. Because I got to a point, I was going through college, getting married, having kids, raising my kids. I always thought that was the purpose, right? Just to go those steps. But what I realized when I got to that final part of that step, which was my kids graduating from high school, going off to college, not needing dad anymore for the most part, at least not on a day to day, I was like, well, wait a minute. This has been my purpose for 20 some years. And now I'm here, I'm divorced. My kids are off to college. What's my purpose? I've been doing this, this job for 20, 30 years at this point, my day job, my career job. And it's like, that can't be all there is for me to just now keep doing this for the next 20, 30 years until I fall over and die of, stress from the job. So it was like blowing my mind, opening my eyes wide open to the fact that, holy cow, there's a whole nother world here in among personal development, where I can use my experience and what I've been through and the things that I've learned and the things that I've experienced. And I look at it like a ladder. I'm climbing a ladder, and I've been helped by people above me, my coaches, my mentors that I've had above me. They're reaching back, pulling me up, and I'm reaching back for the guys that are a rung or two behind me on the ladder and wanting to help them get further up the ladder. Because there was no, until I found, just by luck, coaching. What coaching? I mean, I thought coaching was, going to watch a Tony, you know, seminar and being up on stage and him doing the rah rah thing. I thought that was coaching. I was like, that's ridiculous. I don't want to go and rah rah in an auditorium full of people and be sold some book or some whatever. And until I get engaged with a coach for the first time and realized that's what this is about. That it's about challenging your mindsets. It's about getting rid of those limiting beliefs. It's about understanding why you are the way you are, and then turning that into, okay, that's what I am, but that's not what I want to be. And I want to be this person over here. I want to be this person that helps other people and understands them and listen to them, um, and be that again, pulling somebody up and helping them out so they don't have to go through the struggles that I went through. Yeah, because I there was dark days, and I don't talk about it a lot, but it's, um, those thoughts that creep in, right? That everybody has them, and nobody wants to admit it. And
Mm-hmm.
we think about it, and yeah, I've known men that have taken that drastic step, and I never wanted to be that one of those guys. I would not want to do that to my family. Um, and I don't want to do that to my friends, and I've known guys that have, and it's very, um, it's been very difficult to deal with a few of them. A couple recently that have happened that are just, and just it breaks my heart. Really, that.
It's easy to talk about those things when it's more of a statistic, which the
Yeah,
statistics are getting pretty effing bad if we look at it
yeah,
objectively. But it definitely hits home more when people get it really hitting close to home.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I've had friends of friends in the same category referred to as like ejecting from life. Yeah, yeah. But it ends up what I find interesting. I think there's this natural rebelliousness among people when they hit a certain age, teenage years, things like that, where you're like, you're as a kid, I don't know anything. Teenager, I know everything. And then you're an adult, you're like, wow, I didn't know jack shit. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
exactly.
And you start to look back at what your parents are telling you, and you're like, oh shit, they were right the whole time. Look at that. Wow. Turns out they're onto something, which is not unusual because I think there's a certain necessity to ambitiousness to push boundaries. It's like how
Mhm.
society and civilization has progressed. There's a couple of people on the outsides who are like, we're going to try some new shit, even though we've never done it before, and just see what happens. And boom, you get like, Amazon and Tesla and Elon Musk going to Mars and all that crazy stuff. But it becomes problematic when you throw away everything in the past in favor of brand new things, that asking yourself why were those certain things in the past there in the first place. And one of those things in particular, I think, is the sense of community
Yeah,
and broader purpose, a multi-scale multiple purposes for people in particular. Like you said a second ago, how you were dad, nothing else.
yeah,
Whereas 500 years ago, if you were part of a village, you were dad and brother and maybe grandpa, and also the town guy who did that one particular task that everyone needs, and then also you were the guy who did that, and you had multiple. So if one of these things was removed, you still had other things to fall back on as to why you were there. But nowadays, I think a lot of men become single-minded in their purpose, and purpose itself being more of a state rather than an actual thing that you do. It's like you have multiple purposes in life, and depending on where you are in life on that particular day, it's like while you're at work, your purpose is work. When you get home, your purpose is your family and kids. When you're at church, your purpose is this. And when you're working, your purpose is that. Whatever, and it kind of shifts throughout the day, so you kind of cycle through it. Versus when you say, "I do this one thing and nothing else." This is what you see a lot of people who retire. Men in particular, they retire, and then like a year later, they drop dead
yeah.
because they're miserable. They have nothing. They have no other things that they're doing. They don't know what else to do. They're just like, I was just my job. What else am I without my job?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how did you get along post divorce? It's a pretty popular question, probably the thing that a lot of
Hmm.
men pick. I think a lot of I'm suspecting, I'm just shooting at that a lot of women tend to have very naturally strong social networks
Hmm.
that it kind of cushions the fall a little bit, whereas men tend to go like, oh, it's just me. Oh, here we go, going down. Okay.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I got onto, went into the dating world and found somebody very, very quickly, that really helped. I mean, I had been basically for probably 14 years of the last 19 of my, or of a 19-year marriage, the last 14 years, I've been pretty much a roommate. So it was pretty imperative coming out of it that I find somebody to connect with. Um, and I did get lucky enough to do that. So it wasn't. It was actually, she really helped me more from a understanding what love could be and should have been. Um, because, like I said, my first wife, it was a complete incompatibility. It was um, kind of going in different directions most of the time, thinking different things most of the time, and I really didn't understand what it was like to be in a loving, caring relationship where you actually support each other and want to see each other achieve the things that you want to achieve individually and as a couple. My wife now has been extremely supportive of everything I've done, through my coaching, through the men's group, through the podcast. Um, and never has said a bad thing about it, or why are you doing this, or why are you doing that. So I got very lucky in that regard. But back to the question, um, it was hard. I mean, I still remember vividly sitting alone in an apartment. Um, Again, I had felt alone pretty much in a house full of people for 14 years. Um, then I was literally on my own, alone in an apartment, other than the every other weekend when I had my son, because he was still under 18. But yeah, it was tough, and that was um, really that was probably my rock bottom couple of years when I was trying to understand this new relationship, and that felt good. But then I had some fallout from some things as the first marriage got bad. Some things happened in my professional career that had kind of gone sideways. I had made a job change or two, and things really weren't working out in that regard. And that was probably the bigger thing. And all of that is what got me into, I'll call it the funnel of personal development.
Mhm.
That I just, like I said, I happened to find that book, happened to find that group because I was seeking connection with people, and men in particular. And then one thing led to another, and the dominoes started to fall, where it became very clear and very apparent that my what was brutally wrong with my life was the fact that I didn't have men in my life that I could call on a moment's notice, whether it was hey, I got to move. When I moved out of my marital home, the first divorce, it was my parents and me,
Mhm.
and I didn't have a group of guys I could call. Now I've got a group of guys that I could call and say, hey, I'm moving across town, or I'm going to do. Actually, interesting story. A woman at my church needed help moving, and I enlisted I, guys from my men's group to go help a woman they didn't even know. So that's how it impacts my life, and where I can help somebody else, and bless the guys that are coming to help, because asking them to, hey, come be involved and do this, it's a blessing for them to come and be able to help somebody. And then this woman's getting help doing it. It's such a win-win-win-win-win situation. It's amazing.
Well, it's so funny. I'm laughing because I just caught a video. It was a reaction video of another person, and I'm really trying to stay out of like the darker side of the angry relationship space because I'm trying to get an understanding. My approach is more like I enjoy the connection between the spiritual and the scientific. Like if somebody says to you, you need to breathe so that you can get a connection to your soul. It's like, well, breath work does things for your brain, which does things for your body, your nervous system, vagus nerve. Here's why Buddhism actually works, or whatever it may be. And there was this video I caught. Apparently there was a woman somewhere who posted a viral video that went viral, and it was something about a woman saying she asked these group of men to help her lift something heavy, and she said and I don't know if it was like a group of guys or like four different guys individually, and she basically said like, if I was just hotter, then they would have helped me. The problem is I'm just not hot enough. And now just hearing you say like this little old lady at church says anyone can help me with this, and like four complete strangers were like, yeah, we'd love to. And it just speaks something volumes of like, well, what bigger community you're a part of. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
you to look smart. It's like if you belong to something bigger and that you were kind of contributing to, getting something back of, people are going to want to step in and help.
Yeah.
But it's easy to basically blame the world in certain situations, like, oh, if I just, if I had more money, if I was just hotter, if this, and in reality, it's like, what situation are you in? It's causing this to happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
everything is growth and development.
yeah.
You gotta master one thing before you master the next.
hmm hmm So one of the things I like that you put on your profile was advice for a woman looking for a good man.
Oh yeah, that one. So well, it's actually multiply. When I probably when we connected, it was one thing, and then I've got another one since, and
Let's go for it. Let's go for
I
it.
verified this yesterday. So the first one for a woman looking for a good man, first criteria, first date, whatever, whether you're having coffee, dinner, whatever, doesn't matter. Find out if he's into personal development, and because what I'm hearing from women I talk to, and knowing the men that I know, having roots, and I'm not talking about, yeah, I started last week, I read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and now I'm into personal development, um, they've had to have read No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's almost a lowest common denominator, right? Um, but having read multiple books on whether it's self love, self esteem, any type of personal growth.
All this year. Yep.
Yeah, I got them down. I can't see them on
Yep.
my screen. But yeah, being well read in a lot of that, it what it circumvents is that selfishness. I think that a lot of men nowadays, it's all about me. It's when's my tea time, and when's my you know things like that. And it's very superficial in the fact that it's fill my needs, fill my needs, fill my needs. When it's really you got to fill your own needs,
hmm
fill your own needs first before you pursue a relationship and try to fill, because the intention of a relationship is to fill somebody else's needs, and I always forget the word, um, not maximize, amplify. I always forget the word, amplify your own happiness in the relationship, and while being in service of somebody else. So being in that mindset of I'm doing the work. I'm trying to find out, maybe what my past history was, the things, the traumas, or whether it was a big trauma, it could be abuse or something like that, a big trauma in the past, or what I call death by a thousand cuts, a bunch of little traumas back in your past. Getting your arms around those, getting an understanding of those before you move forward into a relationship is I think a huge upside, both for both the man and the woman, in building a new, good, strong relationship. Second part, the second, well, actually, this is more for men than it's for women. You asked the question the other way, but I'll give you both. Um, my recommendation for men is to as a place to find women. And I heard this on a podcast or somewhere the other day. Um, and I thought it was brilliant. But again, I don't need that. I don't need that advice anymore. But to go to a dance class where there's a lot of women, and they're learning how to dance. And the caveat is that as the man, you need to want to also learn how to dance. You can't just go in hopes that you're going to meet Mrs. Right, right? You have to go and you want to be into it, um, and learn the dance steps, and you're going to be in proximity with women, especially depending on the kind of dance it is. If it's where you're touching and things a lot, you're going to get very intimate with these women, and it's a it's an icebreaker. It's a way to get to meet women that are also into having fun and personal growth and stuff like that. And as a man, you want to be able to be confident enough in yourself, again through your personal growth and development, that hey, I'm okay. I'm going to walk into a dance class as a single man, and you never know what happens. I lost you on audio, man.
Muted myself. Sorry.
You know?
What's funny about that, I can speak from personal experience about this, is that one topic I'll dive into at some point, my own stuff, but maybe you can probably point from a personal experience too, is recognizing emotional deficits in
Mhm.
yourself that happen over long periods of time. Because when I stopped my most recent relationship ended about 3-4 months, so maybe about 5 months ago, depending on how you look at it. Kind of cut it clean back in August, but it was kind of on the rocks for like 3-4 months prior to that. Prior to that, though, I had been single from 27 years old to 32, about 5 years, like prime years. And it was just a lot of it was just me being like, I'm working on myself. I'm working on myself by isolating and staying alone and working all the time and acting like I'm working. And I had people like approach me like, hey, I've got somebody if you're interested. Like, no, I'm still working on myself, still working on myself. And eventually one day I finally had a pretty confident, stable financial base. And I said, all right, cool. Like, let me just go out and start meeting some people, step out of my comfort zone. And I decided to take dance classes because I got lucky with massage therapy. I had a patient of mine who was a dance instructor who I thought she was kind of cute. But I said, all right, let me just try taking dance. I learned some salsa, some uh, ballroom dancing was probably my preferred. But I ended up, for being brutally honest, like falling completely in love with a dance instructor. Completely in love with her. And it wasn't group, it was one-on-one private, which made it even just worse. And like I still remember the first time she was like, all right, we'll do like the ballroom frame thing. And like,
Mhm.
you put your hand on my shoulder and then my hip here. And I was like, hand on the hip. Holy shit. Oh my God. I haven't done this in like 10 years. Oh my God. Like, but it was just like this feeling in my body of like, when's the last time you physically made contact with somebody that you find attractive on some level? Not even sexually attractive, just
Right.
attractive overall. My body, I just like had like I could just feel like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And it was like 8-9 months of just pure limerence of like, maybe it'll work. I asked her out a couple times and she was just like, you're a nice guy, but not really, like, I'm seeing somebody, not really good time. And I was like, maybe if I just stick around longer, maybe she'll eventually
Sure.
get interest
Yeah,
in me.
great.
And then really at reality, I was just like, I was fighting the need to grieve the rejection.
Mhm.
But within that, it was something along the lines of like, I didn't realize what could happen in terms of like, if someone offers you a glass of water and you just drink an entire gallon of water, you have no interest. You're good. But if you just finish walking 3 days in the desert by yourself with no water, someone offers you a glass of water, it's like, holy shit, that's the best tasting water you've ever had in your life. And so I think it's not uncommon for men, myself included, to, if you have this kind of social deprivation or intimate deprivation, you'll meet somebody and you'll be like, oh my God, we're getting married tomorrow. Why? Because you
Mhm.
haven't really had that in such a long time. That, like, that backlog of a deficit just goes like screaming out of your subconscious. And so being wary that if you are interested in getting back into dating and things like that, like, be cognizant of how much you might be missing it, and don't let it, because women can sniff that shit a mile away. If you
Yeah.
go to a dance class and you're like, I'm just gonna go to have fun, they're like, no, you were looking to get laid. We could see it all over your face. Don't even try to hide this one. But yeah, it was helpful for me. I actually did a ballroom dancing competition, got like second place, a whole thing. It was cool. It ended up progressing into just stories for myself. People it'll say like, I did things, I fucking danced in front of professionals, in front of judges. Like 10 years ago, I would have so nervous I wouldn't even walk outside. And now, like, I'm dancing in front of complete strangers, doing like a whole routine and whatnot that we choreographed for like 4 or 5 months together and all stuff. And it was a part of it was like, oh, hopefully it'll work out. And part of it was like, wow, this is impressive. I'm really stepping in my comfort zone. And so, yeah, with the dancing thing, I think there is a value there. If you can find a style that you like I tried salsa up and down. I could not get into it. Bachata, tried it, could not get into it. Maybe I'm just too white. I don't know. But I think, like, if I had to, I would do like social ballroom dancing, because for me in particular, it's structured enough that you don't have to go super improvisational, but you can still kind of get a little bit of fun here and there. But it's just like that one really resonated for me. But
Yeah,
stepping out
you
into
said something interesting in that too, and I should have touched on it as part of what I said earlier about men being okay with themselves, and it's that whole mentality of just going to get laid. Um, I think guys put way too much into that when you're going into a relate or you're going even on just a date.
yeah,
You come with that energy that, oh, either well you're going to show up either right, and she's going to be pleasing to the eyes or not, right? Because men have different tastes. I don't want to specify any specific, but you're going to be into her physically or not. And if you are into her physically and you're sitting there thinking about while you're trying to have a conversation, get to know you conversation is, I want to get in, she's going to feel that. And that's where I think a lot of guys, and then of course she's going to put up a wall. She's going to get negative. She's going to get, be pushing away. And then he's going to read that as, yeah, she's not into me, so I got to protect my ego, and oh yeah, I'm not going to see you again because you didn't make me feel like a man, right?
Didn't put
And
out.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's because you're doing this the whole time instead of just coming into it with it. Because if you come into it with I'm good with me, I know that I'm valuable. I love myself. Whatever you get, whatever it is, you got to tell yourself to have that, you know, come into it with no expectations and just getting to know another person and not looking at them as a piece of meat, which a majority of guys do.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
have a lot more success in building relationships with women when you do that.
I think that the underlying point of that though is interesting, that something like two things I can pull to. It's like sexual desire overlays multiple things below, which is like you just have a natural biological urge to reproduce, totally normal. And when that urge is not being like acknowledged on some level, it can feel scary. It can feel like painful, almost like you're being like genetically abandoned into the next generation or something
Mhm.
crazy like that. But a lot of guys don't realize that it's like it's not. I think in my life, if I'm being honest, I've had like one person I hooked up with because I just could not stomach the idea of, and this is going to sound like people are just like he's bullshitting, but just like hookups, I did it once and it was just like this felt so empty. This felt
Mhm.
like just like I could have done the same thing to myself in the bathroom if I really wanted to. Like there was just like
Yeah.
it's mutual friction. All it was. And it's not to say anything against her, to say like, oh, it wasn't worth it. It was just like if I didn't have that, if you don't have that connection, there's something, a world of difference you're missing out on. But being able to allow yourself to get into the state to feel that connection is a
Mhm.
very vulnerable state. I think a
Yes.
lot of guys will try to circumvent that as being like, oh, like they'll. This is what I point to. It's like biological, like an evolutionary perspective. Like the bad boy essentially is trying to make up for an insecurity he's feeling underneath the surface.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's just like he just likes to hook up and nothing else. Like, no, he's afraid of being seen for who he really is. It's
Yeah.
really what's happening. He's
Hmm.
putting on a persona. He's learned how to do like the hairstyle and the walk, and he works out 18 times a day, and has exactly the right pickup lines. Why? Because if you really knew how scared he was below all of that, he would have never shown up in the first place. So he's
Hmm.
hoping to just kind of get you enough, convince you to stick around just long enough to have you sleep with him, to reaffirm he has some value before he moves on to the next person, because then you're going to start seeing who he really is, and that's going to scare the fuck out of him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Putting
Yeah.
on a clinic today.
Yeah.
And that's funny. As you said, that one of our standards in my men's group is um, don't take things personally. And basically, that is what that boils down to is don't engage your ego. So a
Mm.
lot of times, what guys will do in that situation, it's all about ego. It's about making myself feel better. And again, that has a tendency to repulse good women. So you're you're already swimming in a shallow pool of because we're so fixated. And there's guys in my group, but they're fixated on the look. So first you take the whole pool and you say, okay, she's got to look like this. So now the pool is this much smaller, and then you show up with, I'm engaging my ego, and she's got to make me feel good, and you just keep minimizing the number of women in the pool that you're trying to swim to fish in,
Yep.
and you're gonna end up being having multiple dates and having them all go wrong, and then saying, oh, I'm giving up on women because there's nobody good. But there are great women out
Right.
there, and there are great men out there as
Yeah.
well.
There we go. Yeah.
And
The reverse that.
well, I was saying that women, yes, women are doing the same thing for different reasons. That I won't get into the psychology because that's something I don't understand. But they're doing the same thing when they're looking at a guy. And the problem is the way the guys represent himself. If he's not into personal development, he's not into growth. He wants to sit and play video games all damn day. If I was a woman, no hell no. I am not going to start a relationship with a guy that his main goal in life is to, you know, be level 300 on Dungeons and Dragons. That's not that does not. As a woman, I can imagine that does not scream great father and husband. Um,
Yeah.
so we got to. guys, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. We gotta show up.
Well, it's there's interesting you mentioned psychology of it. It's tough because there were the last podcast I ran was something I called it rebuilding the village, and the idea was like we used to have like a it takes a village to raise a child, and a
Mhm.
bunch of other of those quotes around the idea of a village, and the question being like what happened to the village? Why is like everyone anxiety and depression skyrocketing and this and that? And I think a lot of it was the idea that a lot of the things we had back in the proverbial village days were things that we didn't understand why they worked, but they worked pretty well because they kind of constrained certain parts of our biology that were never meant to get out of control. And from like both perspectives, for example, women are going to be looking for guys with ambition or, that have certain observable characteristics and traits of quality genetic material in terms of a father and
Yeah.
a potential husband. Totally fair. Problem gets when you create dating apps that allow people to screen out 6 foot or higher, six figures or higher, has to drive a Lamborghini or I don't want to talk to him. Because it's like it's partly part and parcel of a female psychology to say, I want a guy who can demonstrate something like that, which is fine. But then my question always becomes like, well, what if he's 5'11" and makes $99,000 a year? And he's the nicest guy ever, and he could have been like the greatest father to your kids ever. You
Yeah.
never would have met him because of one little tiny little swipe on the number right there. Or
Hmm.
guys doing the same thing that we look for, attractive women that display certain characteristics of fertility. But when you take those and you exaggerate them, this is a funny story. I think it was like a month ago. I was at the gym working out, doing some stuff, whatever it was, and some woman just happened to walk in my field of vision, like way off in the distance, and she was doing like, of course, she was doing like bent over deadlifts or something like that, of course. But she was wearing like the tightest Lululemon whatever pants, and I'm pretty sure she had ass implants. I'm pretty sure she did. I looked at her for like 3 seconds. I went full caveman.
Uh,
Just like my brain just turned off when I saw it, and I kind of snapped out of it. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like that monkey brain looking
yeah.
for like signs of fertility in the environment. But what she's doing is she's intentionally trying to signal that in the other guys around by the way she looks. And
Hmm.
I'm sure people will say, well, she's dressing how she wants to. Like, let's be real here. Come on. But what was interesting was to think about that, like, not to get super scientific, but there's a certain hip to waist ratio that a guy might look at a woman and say, like, she's attractive. And it's like, if the waist hip ratio gets too big, you get to a point where you're like, this almost looks a little ridiculous. Like, maybe like one thing here, a little nicer, a little lesser. Okay, what the hell? It's getting a little bit too much. To the point that you could tell, like, that definitely looks fake. That looks like somebody did something to modify it because it doesn't really fit within a particular range that my brain is looking for. But I think what's happening is that we're trying to push the limits of what that range could be on both sides of the spectrum. Of like men trying to push, like, well, if you want me to have money and status, I'll become the richest person in the world who's 7 feet tall. Like, if you want a woman to have like a nice butt and boobs, I'll get like I got the exact perfect dimensions of as much. This is where you start to see things like pornography getting out of hand. Is like it's taking these parts of our psychology, like I want him to have a little bit more I would be successful, but how successful? I want her to have a nice butt, but how nice of a butt? Whatever it may be. And we don't realize that we end up filtering out other people in our lives that could be quality prospective mates because it's going too far into exaggerating parts of the brain that were not meant to be blown out of proportion. Case in point, with
Yeah.
my last
For sure.
girlfriend, it was funny. We met on a bar crawl about 2 years ago, and she was with a group of. I was with a guy friend who was seeing a girl from her group of friends, and we kind of just like bumped into each other. And being brutally honest, like she wasn't the first person I talked to. I thought she was cute, but then her friends were also wearing like sexy pirate costume and like sexy this and sexy that. And my brain was like, oh, I gotta go talk to that. That looks cool. But at some point in the middle of the night, she approached me. We started a conversation. I thought she was cute, and then once I got to know her, we went on a couple dates. Then she became really effing hot. Because once I saw, like, oh wow, you actually are feminine and nice and nurturing and caring, and you can put yourself together. She went from like cute to fucking hot. And she said the
Yeah.
same thing to me. She's like, when I met you, it was like a slow burn. Like you were kind of cute, maybe we weren't like a superstar, but then once I got to know you, holy shit, you became hot. And a lot of guys and a lot of girls miss out on that idea of you need time to let those other parts of the person present themselves that will jack
Yeah.
up their attractiveness to you beyond
Yeah.
just the superficial.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's what I mean. But I mean, when you find two people that are both into their personal growth, understand where they're at in their lives, have things figured out, and are into personal growth, understanding what their history was and where they came from and where they were wounded, and all those things, and yeah, you may not have to have them all fixed, but to at least have them understood
Mm-hmm.
and be able to move forward. I just popped into my head. I'm thinking of this couple at church. I don't know how they ever came together, but I could tell just from a few conversations when two wounded people come together, and they're currently going through they got married on in a very short period of time, and now they're getting divorced after a very short period of time, and it's just tragic because there's a child involved now, and it's super sad.
Well,
And
yeah. Sorry to cut you off there. The interesting thing with that, I'm not sure. Are you familiar with shadow work? Yeah. Do you do much in your practice?
not really. I've seen it. I've actually been more part of it than administering it. So.
Yeah. So the idea was interesting with my last relationship, and I had to realize I have a pattern myself. I've had a pattern of finding women who had father wounds.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, their parents, the ones that kind of like I liked a lot more and got along well with, divorced parents, messed up fathers somewhere in the background.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, though, is that more often than not, these people with mutual wounding will see something in the other person that they themselves are lacking. And so, like, even for me, I was attracting women that were much more like independent, weren't as needy, because I was definitely feeling needy and whatnot emotionally. Because my mother, she turned me into an emotional caretaker growing up. And then now years later realizing like, oh, this has been carrying over for a long time now. Holy shit, I needed to fix this, which I'm doing plenty well now with men's groups and things like that. But I think subconsciously was like, I like your ability to be self-sufficient. And
Mm-hmm.
then with the other person, that a person who can't rely on people looks at me and says, I like your ability to rely on people. Because like we both need that. But the problem often comes about when that healing process starts to take place. It's your brain fights it tooth and nail. It hates it. It doesn't want to change. It has patterns it likes, and all of a sudden you start questioning yourself. Because a lot of times, like the work is what it's rewiring yourself neurologically, letting your nervous system acclimate to new conditions, letting your nervous system acclimate to it's okay to rely on people. It's okay to have somebody hold you. With massage therapy, I've had people who are trauma victims, who are sexual assault victims, and like part of their recovery is physical touch reacclimation,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
getting used to, rather than acquired, getting
Yeah.
used to being physically touched again, because their body is so on such a high alarm, but they
Yeah.
just physically can't let somebody touch them, which is then messing up their marriage, messing up their relationships, messing up their lives, and things like that.
Yeah.
But I've had them come in and they'll tell me things like, yeah, my husband wants to be like, soft and mushy with me, and it just feels, it feels gross, feels disgusting. I'm like, yeah, that's it used to be normal when you were before it happened.
Right.
Or in this case, this is a traumatic one-time incident, but it also could be an entire childhood where you were never hugged, or never told you were loved, or never told you never have your needs met in a timely manner. And then also as an adult, someone comes and says like, like I love you, I want to give you a hug. You're like, oh, I want to throw up. Oh, what the hell? That feels so wrong. Why would you want to do that? Oh, it's disgusting. It's nasty. I hate that. Why? Like, because you didn't get it. Because that's exactly what it is. One of the guys, I'm in the group, the guy leading the group, he's talking about this and how he's mentioned how with his son, I think he's like 2 or 3 years old now. He mentioned how when his son was first born, for the first like 4 to 6 months, his wife would walk in the room when his son was sleeping and say something like, "Oh, like here, like who, like where's the most handsome boy in the world? Oh my God, who is this?" And he's like, "I fucking hated it." Every time she said that to him, like it took me such a long time to realize, like, oh, it pissed me off so much. So I realized, like, I didn't get that growing up. That's exactly what it was. Like, I didn't get that growing up, and that's why my body was like, "Why would you do that?" Like, because you never had it. Never had it growing up. I don't know if there's any last topics you wanted to toss in there, any themes or takeaways.
No. Just that I actually one of the things I just been working on is a new course that I just put out last week. It's called Get Your Life Together in 6 Months.
Beautiful.
You can find that through the links on either my Instagram or my TikTok, which are both at The Relationship Engineer. You can also find stuff on my website with www.menbecomingbettermen.com, all one word. And yeah, that's I just like I said, my goal in life is to help men get moving forward and get heading in the right direction to so they don't have to endure some of the pain and suffering that a lot of guys go through, especially coming out of divorce or some type of traumatic childhood event.
Awesome. Bob, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate this.